Welcome to another Space Story, the podcast where we pause the world, drift into the cosmos, and let curiosity carry us beyond the stars. I'm your host, Henry, and I'm thrilled you're tuning in tonight. In this episode, we slip into the silent observatory of an alien race, peering at humanity from a vantage unlike any we've known. From our thunderous wars to our soaring art, from the darkest recesses of our souls to the brightest sparks of compassion. What do they see? And what do they think when they finally speak? Long before we ever looked up and wondered if we were alone, they were already watching. From a vantage point carved deep within a crystalline spire orbiting a distant sun, the observers, an ancient collective with senses beyond our imagining, turned their multifaceted eyes toward a small blue world teeming with life. At first, Earth was nothing but a flickering light, yet over centuries, the tapestry of human existence unfurled before them in vivid detail. They cataloged our greatest triumphs and our ugliest betrayals. The fractal patterns of our city lights at night, sprawling like neural networks, the rhythmic pulse of our heartbeat translated into electromagnetic signatures, the laughter and tears captured as oscillating wavelengths. To the observers, humanity was an exquisite paradox, capable of infinite creativity and catastrophic self-destruction. The first thing they noticed? Inevitable, almost ritualistic, were our conflicts. From primitive skirmishes over hunting grounds to planet-shaping world wars, each outbreak of violence sent ripples through the fabric of their studies. They measured the crescendo of artillery barrages, the synchronized strategies of aerial campaigns, the anguished pleas encoded in intercepted broadcasts. And yet, even in our bloodiest hours, they detected something unexpected. A fleeting, almost musical resonance when humans rallied to protect the innocent. They puzzled over it. Why did our species, driven by fear or pride, summon acts of valor that defied logic? They cross-referenced biological stress markers with chemical signatures of adrenaline and endorphins, noting how soldiers sometimes found moments of grace amidst chaos. An observer linguist eventually whispered, "They erupt in violence, then craft poetry about it. They shatter their own world and then rebuild monuments to peace." Art was another revelation. To an alien intellect accustomed to the sterile logic of data streams, our art was gloriously illogical. Vibrant explosions of color, sound, and emotion. They traced the evolution from cave paintings, handprints pressed like fragile echoes. They even learned to parse our abstract strokes and dissonant chords, finding in them a secret language of hope, despair, and longing. In one particularly curious experiment, they replayed every human love song ever recorded, cross-dating the rise and fall of orchestral swells with the ebb and flow of solar flares in their own star system. The results astonished them. When Earth warred, our love songs turned somber and minor. When peace blossomed, they soared into major keys, so uplifting they could light up the dark corridors of the spire. It was as if our hearts beat in synchrony with the cosmos itself. But it wasn't all conflict or creativity. The observer's most confounding discovery was our compassion. One scientist among them, quiet, methodical, compiled a dossier of human kindness. The first vaccinated child, the volunteers rebuilding after tsunamis, the anonymous donor who bankrolled the cure for rare diseases. They calculated the statistical improbability of such altruism on a species so capable of cruelty. The head observer recorded in the log, they kill, then they heal. They destroy, then they preserve. We thought them monsters, until we saw them save a dying star. Yet for all they learned, many questions remained unanswered. Why do humans dream in images of flying? There is no evolutionary advantage to believing one can sprout wings. How did abstract mathematics, the purest form of thought, emerge almost simultaneously across different continents? What drives a being who can recognize its own mortality to still reach for the infinite? These curiosities fueled heated debates among the observers. Some proposed that humanity possessed an undetected quantum resonance, a bridge to some collective consciousness. Others argued that we were an experiment of nature itself, a species designed by chance to explore its own meaning. And so they waited, 1,000-year cycles passing like heartbeats, until one among them decided it was time to speak. As the echo of cosmic time settled into stillness, a single observer stepped forward. Its crystalline voice, modulated to translate thought into sound, filled the void between stars and Earth's trembling receivers. We have watched, yet in their wake you plant seeds of olive. Listeners exchanged stunned glances. How could an alien quantify both our ferocity and our forgiveness with such poetic balance? News anchors stumbled over their scripts. Soldiers on distant deployments tipped their helmets, uncertain whether to salute or kneel in respect. Then came revelations that made humanity gasp. You dream, the observer continued, of wings you do not possess. The statement rippled through sleep labs where scientists tracked REM patterns. Overnight, research papers popped up. Nearly 65% of human dreams feature flying, though none of our physiology ever supported it. Psychologists speculated that flight in dreams represents our aspiration to transcend limits. Philosophers mused that perhaps our collective unconscious remembers a past we cannot fathom. Meanwhile, The observer waited patiently, its many facets reflecting Earth's blue glow in the darkness. Without warning, the transmission flickered into dialects at once. Each listener heard their own tongue. English morphed into Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, Navajo, all seamlessly. Your language is the code of your soul, the observer said, and it fractures across the world, yet still you understand each other. Linguists were electrified. How had the observer decoded syntax, semantics, idioms, everything so flawlessly? Some proposed the aliens tapped into neural patterns directly. Others believed they possessed a universal translator, refined over millennia. Regardless, the moment confirmed one truth. Their empathy for our diversity surpassed even our own. Then the observer offered a curiosity that would haunt us forever. You count your years from an arbitrary point in your history, it noted. Yet you share your calendar with the cycles of the very star you orbit. Is this a tribute or a chain? Some theologians claimed it was an homage to an ancient sun-worshipping cult. Astrophysicists pointed out its simplified tracking seasons. Poets argued it tied our psyche to celestial rhythm. Whatever the reason, the observer's question revealed how alien even our most familiar constructs could seem. As hours turned into days, the observer disclosed more. It spoke of our art. Your music travels not only through air, but through our star's corona, altering plasma flows in patterns we cannot fully decode. Particle physicists scrambled to measure star emissions for echoes of Beethoven. Composers composed symphonies meant to resonate with solar wind. Museums staged exhibits, pairing paintings with star maps, hoping to capture the same harmony the aliens perceived. Then, unexpectedly, the transmission paused. Static crackled like distant rainfall. Rumors circulated that Earth's atmosphere interfered. After an eternity compressed into minutes, it resumed. We have a theory that your acts of compassion emit a field of kindness, a low-frequency resonance that binds you together. Relief workers, volunteers, and charities surged with renewed purpose. Scientists began designing sensitive detectors to pick up this so-called compassion field. Some skeptics laughed, but dozens of experiments launched within 48 hours. In the lull that followed, mysteries lingered. The observer did not explain its own origins. Share with us your arts, your dreams, your flaws, and we will share ours, if you dare to ask. And with that, the signal faded into the cosmic background, leaving Earth in a reverent hush. In the days that followed, humanity transformed. Concert halls opened their doors to broadcasts of celestial radio triads. Schools rewrote curricula to include lessons on empathy waves and dream symbolism. Armies re-examined their codes of conduct. wary that violence might tarnish our newly revealed resonance. Libraries cataloged every act of kindness in real time. Volunteer rescues, blood donations, anonymous donations to the poor. Each one a data point in an unprecedented global project. Unresolved theories multiplied like stars. Was the observer truly alone in its spire, or part of an alliance watching countless worlds? Could our compassion field someday be harnessed to heal planetary scars, radiation zones, deserts, and what of the sleeping winged dreamers? Might we one day achieve flight, not through machines, but by unlocking a dormant potential the aliens hinted at? Above all, the greatest mystery remained. Why Earth? Scientists measured its orbital resonance, its magnetic field strength, its biochemical diversity, yet every answer spawned another question. Did some cosmic design select our small planet for its paradoxical blend of violence and love? Was our art a beacon, our compassion a signal flare? Or were we simply fortunate observers in a universe that delights in variety? Night after night, humans looked skyward, not with fear, but with curiosity. The observer's words had ignited something unquenchable, a relentless drive to explore, to understand, and to connect. For the first time, our species felt unified by the knowledge that someone, something out there cared about us enough to listen, to watch, and embedding symphonies and paintings and catalogs of compassion into digital vessels bound for the stars. We realize the most important truth the observer revealed, that in the grand tapestry of the cosmos, humanity's greatest power lies not in weapons or machines, but in the infinite capacity of our hearts. As humanity gathered to craft its response, a palpable excitement rippled through every corner of the globe. In bustling research centers, engineers labored over the alien frequencies, fine-tuning transmitters initially designed for deep space probes. They adapted retired satellite dishes into makeshift interstellar megaphones, adjusting their angles against the night sky as though saluting an unseen friend. In classrooms from Kansas to Kerala, children sketched hopeful messages, colorful diagrams of Earth's wildlife, portraits of smiling families, and handwritten poems about starlight. Even on crowded city streets, street artists painted murals depicting two hands reaching across a galactic divide, one human and one crystalline. Scientists convened conferences that felt more like celebrations than academic symposiums. Linguists debated the nuances of the observer's syntax. Did the repeated soft consonant in their farewell phrase imply emphasis or affection? Psychologists held workshops on dream analysis techniques inspired by the aliens. Notes on our flying fantasies, encouraging participants to keep vivid dream journals in hopes of decoding hidden layers of collective meaning. Biologists teamed with artists to create compassion blooms, bioluminescent plants genetically engineered to glow brightest in the presence of human kindness. A literal flowering of the observer's so-called resonance field. Did that mean we were tethered to the sun by choice or by unseen forces? Debates erupted on radio shows. Was our timekeeping an act of worship, an unconscious homage to our star, or simply practical vanity? Poets wrote verses turning the Gregorian calendar into a cosmic tapestry, weaving months into a story of souls dancing with light. Amid the flurry of optimism, a quieter movement took shape. The Dream Initiative. Inspired by the observer's fascination with flight dreamers, volunteers from every continent participated in lucid dream workshops. Artists created immersive VR landscapes designed to guide participants toward sensations of soaring through alien skies. Reports poured in. Some dreamers described feeling an otherworldly presence, as though guiding winds carried them. Others woke with sketches of improbable cities suspended on clouds. None could prove the dream serve as an uncharted channel of dialogue. At the United Nations, ambassadors drafted a universal reply, a carefully balanced communiqué, interlacing science with sentiment. They decided to open with a collective musical composition recorded by youth orchestras worldwide, its tempo mimicking the heartbeat of Earth. Next, they would broadcast a kaleidoscope of human voices, reciting poems in dozens of languages, each voice a thread in our shared tapestry. They selected images of fragile ecosystems, rainforests dripping with newborn orchids, seedlings sprouting in war-torn fields reclaimed for peace. And finally, they would pose 3 questions back to the observers. Where do you find solace? What does art look like to a non-human mind? And, if you can, teach us one of your dreams. On the eve of transmission, the world held its collective breath. In Tokyo, a street vendor offered free bowls of ramen to everyone who showed up beneath the largest satellite dish. Serve as an uncharted channel of dialogue. At the United Nations, ambassadors drafted a universal reply, a carefully balanced communiqué, interlacing science with sentiment. They decided to open with a collective musical composition recorded by youth orchestras worldwide, its tempo mimicking the heartbeat of Earth. Next, they would broadcast a kaleidoscope of human voices, reciting poems in dozens of languages, each voice a thread in our shared tapestry. They selected images of fragile ecosystems, rainforests dripping with newborn orchids, seedlings sprouting in war-torn fields reclaimed for peace. And finally, they would pose 3 questions back to the observers. Where do you find solace? What does art look like to a non-human mind? And, if you can, teach us one of your dreams. On the eve of transmission, the world held its collective breath. In Tokyo, in Nairobi, school children formed a human mosaic, spelling hello in the desert sands, their shadows shifting like hourglasses under the setting sun. In Reykjavik, volcanologists paused their lava monitoring experiments to watch the night sky, hoping to glimpse a response before dawn. Then, with a final calibration, the signal beamed into the void. For a moment, an infinitesimal heartbeat, humanity waited in silence. Was this the culmination of centuries of stargazing? Of whispers into the dark? Or merely an echo that would drift unheard among the stars? To our astonishment, a reply shimmered back almost instantly. It wasn't words at first, but a cascade of patterns, fractal geometries unfolding in radio pulses, each burst unfolding like petals in a cosmic flower. Mathematicians erupted in applause as they denoted within hours. Images began to coalesce on researchers' screens. Sculptures sculpted not from marble or metal, but from resonant energy fields. Landscapes of crystalline forests where light bent in impossible ways. Beings whose shapes defied three-dimensional limits, existing partially in dimensions we had scarcely theorized. Alongside these visuals arrived a single phrase, rendered in the chorus of languages we'd first heard from Earth. We dream with you. Across continents, people paused. In hospitals, patients gazed skyward from their windows, transfixed by the thought that somewhere beyond, alien minds shared our dreams. In offices, workers set aside spreadsheets to contemplate what it meant to dream together with a species so different. Even skeptics, those who had warned of hidden agendas, found themselves whispering the phrase, as though it held a secret key to something profound. Yet not all questions were answered. The nature of the compassion field remained elusive, its detection still unverified by instruments. The origin of their crystalline spire, its location in space, its age, its architects, remained hidden behind the cascading fractals. And the core mystery that had drawn both races into dialogue lingered. What compelled a civilization so ancient to turn its gaze toward a fledgling species? Was it curiosity, kinship, or something deeper? As Earth prepared for what would surely become the most extraordinary cultural exchange in history, one truth stood clear. Our journey had only just begun. The handshake across light years was more than a meeting of worlds. It was a mirror held up to our own nature, reflecting both our brilliance and our imperfections. And now, guided by fractal petals blooming in the silent void, humanity stepped forward with open hearts, eager to learn and to teach, weaving new patterns into Earth's collective consciousness. As dawn broke over New York City, Los Angeles, and every small town in between, people stirred with a renewed sense of purpose. Scientists in Houston scrambled to adapt their deep space arrays, tuning them to the precise recurrence intervals of the alien geometries, while street performers in Chicago choreographed dances mimicking the unfolding spirals. The world felt alive with invisible currents of possibility. In a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Denver, engineers assembled the first resonance chamber, a domed enclosure lined with magnetostrictive panels that could both emit and detect the low-frequency waves the observers called the compassion field. Volunteers entered one by one, laying their hands on the smooth walls as sensors recorded. Even skeptics admitted that something changed in the air whenever a group gathered to resonate. Meanwhile, at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a cross-disciplinary fractal forum sprang into being. Mathematicians, artists, psychologists, and even game designers met weekly to decode the hidden syntax of the alien pulses. One breakthrough came when a doctoral student discovered that selective repetition of a particular fractal motif, dubbed Petal 8, synchronized with human alpha brainwaves, inducing a light meditative state. Within days, meditation apps released Petal 8 soundscapes, guiding users through audio-visual experiences that felt eerily like the VR environments dreamers described weeks earlier. The entertainment industry, never far behind, seized on the phenomenon. In Atlanta, a studio produced the first observer-inspired series, animated tales set in crystalline cities and sung in the alien tone patterns, with subtitled human dialogue. The pilot episode premiered to record streaming numbers, its opening line echoing the phrase that had united us. "We dream with you." Critics marveled at how the show fused science fiction with real-world science, weaving in clips of actual resonance chamber sessions and interviews with volunteers who swore they felt gentle warmth wash over them as the fractals pulsed. On the other side of the country, a community theater in Seattle staged a play called Echoes Across Light Years. Local actors performed monologues inspired by Earth's first broadcast, a farmer reading the collective poems we'd sent, a software coder interpreting the alien architecture in code, a nurse recalling how her hospital ward went silent to listen. Audiences responded with standing ovations and tearful applause. Post-show discussions often devolved into impromptu workshops, where attendees shared their own dreams, histories, and hopes, an exercise in empathy that felt more profound than any survey or. Yet beneath the joy lay persistent questions. In Berlin, a team of archaeologists testing for relics of ancient civilizations found cave etchings that bore a staggering resemblance to one of the fractal patterns, long before any known human culture had conceived of such geometry. Carbon dating placed the drawings at roughly 30,000 years old. Were our ancestors somehow channeling the same resonance fields? Had the observers been in contact with proto-humans, only to remain silent until now? The discovery ignited fierce debate. If the compassion field had always fluttered around us, why had it taken millennia to manifest in art or ritual? Simultaneously, marine biologists off the coast of Vancouver monitored whale songs, curious whether the creature's low-frequency calls aligned with the alien waves. Preliminary data. Could the ocean's giants have been unconsciously tuned to the compassion field? And if so, what did it mean that non-human life responded to this resonance? The implications ballooned into a sprawling network of questions touching every corner of Earth's biosphere. At the U.S. Naval Observatory in D.C., strategists convened to assess national security implications. Would knowledge of the compassion field alter the calculus of deterrence? Could resonance chambers be weaponized to induce pacifism or chaos? Security experts drafted protocols for resonance regulation, arguing that any technology able to sway emotions at scale must be tightly controlled. Civil liberties groups pushed back, warning against authoritarian misuse. In Congress, heated hearings grappled with balancing innovation, public welfare, and individual rights. Amid these political tensions, grassroots movements flourished in rural during planting to harmonize growth cycles, reporting slightly higher germination rates. Though agronomists cautioned, these results were anecdotal. In Miami, health clinics offered free compassion field therapy sessions, combining guided meditation, fractal visuals, and soft humming tuned to the observer frequencies. Patients claimed reduced anxiety and improved mood, but placebo-controlled studies were just beginning. One of the most poignant developments occurred in a small Alaskan village, where an elder recalled an old legend about sky people who whispered dreams to children long ago. She organized nightly gatherings where villagers shared these oral histories, weaving them into modern narratives of alien contact. Anthropologists flocked to record the stories, preserving them for posterity. The blending of ancient myth with cutting-edge science created a tapestry of meaning. By now, it was clear that this tale wasn't confined to laboratories or theaters. It was unfolding in every human heart. The compassion field remained experimentally unverified. The origins of the observer still shrouded, and the true scope of human-alien connection tantalizingly out of reach. But as communities from Hoboken to Honolulu, from Boston to Boise, embraced the mystery, a broader truth emerged. Whether fractals or folklore, dreams or data, it was the act of collective wonder, of daring to ask unfathomable questions, that bound us together. And so, as trillions of atoms in our bodies hummed with shared curiosity, humanity stood at the threshold, armed with new insights and unresolved enigmas. We prepared to step beyond our world once more, this time not just as passive watchers or awestruck recipients, but as active participants in a dialogue that would redefine an unprecedented joint mission. Project Unity, a fleet of small, autonomous probes designed to carry our universal reply and expand the dialogue beyond radio waves. Engineers in Toulouse fashioned aerodynamic bodies whose curves echoed the alien fractal geometry, while programmers in Bengaluru wrote exploratory algorithms that blended artificial curiosity with human creativity. Each probe would carry 3 payloads: a data sphere containing the musical composition and poems we'd sent, a living seed bank representing Earth's biosphere, and a dream archive, a holographic capsule filled with recordings of volunteers recounting their most vivid flying dreams. Preparations unfolded at a dizzying pace as private companies and national agencies set aside rivalries, united by the same exhilarating question: what would it mean to meet face to pattern with the observers? On launch day, spectators gathered at viewing sites. Children in pajamas pressed their noses against windows, eyes wide, as golden exhaust plumes arced skyward. When the chrono hit T-0, the rockets lifted in perfect synchrony, their contrails interweaving like cosmic calligraphy. For a moment, the sky looked as if it too were responding to the compassion field, glowing softly in pastel hues at dawn's edge. As the probes escaped Earth's gravity, they dispersed into different trajectories. One aimed directly at the observer spire's estimated coordinates. Another set on a reconnaissance swing-by of Mars and Jupiter, capturing data on how alien waves behaved near different planetary environments. A third destined for the asteroid belt, where instruments would seek hidden resonance in ancient rocks. On board each craft, tiny quantum entanglement beacons would relay status updates at light speed delays, a nod to humanity's longing for instantaneous connection. Meanwhile, back on Earth, life continued in parallel worlds of routine and revelation. In Sao Paulo, a neighborhood clinic piloted resonance rooms, soundproof chambers where patients immersed themselves in looping fractal projections and low-frequency hums, emerging hours later, reporting experiences akin to lucid dreams. Neuroscientists scanned volunteers' brains, charting changes in neural connectivity that hinted at deeper synchronization with the patterns. In Cairo, a collective of street musicians performed fractal jams, layering improvisations over real-time transcriptions of the observer pulses, their saxophones and sitars weaving textures that felt alive, almost sentient. Far above, the International Space Station joined the endeavor. Astronauts switched on a custom receiver to pick up the alien broadcast and redirected its pulses into the station's zero-gravity chamber. There, they observed crystals suspended in microgravity, subtly realigning themselves. Video of the experiment went viral, sparking widespread fascination with the idea that resonance could bridge the divide not only between minds, but even between states of matter. In universities from Oxford to Tokyo, courses titled Humanity and the Observer sprang up overnight. Students debated ethics panels about sending living seeds into deep space. Was it right to risk unintended contamination of distant ecosystems? They wrote essays exploring the philosophical implications of a compassion field. Could love be measured and harnessed like a renewable resource? Guest lectures by astronauts and poets set side by side, each offering unique perspectives on our place in the cosmos. Amid the flurry of activity, a quieter project matured in the deserts of Nevada. There, researchers constructed the Hall of Echoes. Visitors walked barefoot across the etched floors while the speakers pulsed the observer waves around them. Some report of visions of crystalline landscapes. Others claim to hear faint whispers in unfamiliar tongues. The facility became a pilgrimage site for seekers of every stripe. New Agers, skeptics, scientists, drawn by the promise of first-hand communion with the unknown. And yet, even as hope soared, shadows lingered. In Moscow, analysts monitoring the probes, telemetry observed intermittent signal distortions near the asteroid belt. Pulses that bent unpredictably, as if interacting with something hidden in the void. Was it simply noise or evidence of other watchers? Conspiracy forums buzzed with rumors of observer outposts disguised as rogue asteroids. Some even claimed that fragments of the spire itself orbited the sun, camouflaged among space debris. In Antarctica, a structure of unknown origin, carved from translucent crystal. Its interior walls bore fractal etchings, identical to those the observers had broadcast, and at its center sat a spherical device faintly humming in the compassion frequency's range. The find electrified the scientific community. Could this be an ancient transmission relay, left behind by the observers to guide early humans? Or a relic of a long-forgotten visitation? As researchers prepared to power it up, they hesitated, afraid that some doors, once opened, could never be closed. Above all these threads ran the human story. Artists inspired to create, scientists driven to discover, dreamers emboldened to imagine. As the probes vanished into the inky expanse, bearing our hopes and our humanity, they carried with them not only data, but the beating heart of our species. We had transformed from passive recipients of an alien gaze into active explorers, weaving our end now as we await the first reply from our dream ships. One question burns brighter than any star. Will the observers recognize themselves in the echoes of our designs, in the patterns we've embraced, in the dreams we carry? Or will they challenge us with enigmas even deeper, pulling us onward into mysteries we cannot yet comprehend? This closes not with answers, but with the exhilarating promise of the unknown and the unshakable belief that wherever the next signal leads, we will follow together, guided by the lattice of compassion and curiosity we have forged across light years. As the world held its breath for the dream ship's first reply, life on Earth took on an almost mythic quality. Every morning, people scanned the skies, imagining faint contrails of distant craft weaving through the celestial tapestry. Amateur radio operators in small towns adjusted their homemade antennas, hoping to catch a whisper from the probes. Meanwhile, the sealed crystal chamber beneath Antarctica's ice waited patiently for activation, its fractal walls humming with dormant potential. A team of engineers and glaciologists finally decided to power it up. They lowered a submersible drone into the icy shaft, its lights cutting through the darkness like a beacon of discovery. As the drone's cables unreeled, the chamber's inner sphere flickered to life, bathing the frosted walls in soft, prismatic light. Data streamed in: temperature fluctuations, energy readings, and most intriguingly, coded pulses that matched the compassion field's signature. The International Research Consortium watched in awe as the chamber seemed to respond to Earth's broadcasts, resonating in time with the fractal sequences humanity had embraced. Back in Geneva, the United Nations convened an emergency session. Or was it a trap? A silent sentinel waiting to judge our readiness. Diplomats and scientists debated for hours, some arguing to share the find publicly, others urging restraint until they fully understood the technology. Ultimately, the decision was to proceed, but with caution. A multidisciplinary task force was assembled, combining expertise in exopolitics, ethics, and glaciology, all chartered to unlock the chamber's secrets responsibly. Meanwhile, cosmic news arrived from the probes. The first status update crackled into Earth's deep space. At the same time, on the Pacific island of Vanuatu, a grassroots project named Echo Isles took shape. Locals and volunteers built floating platforms adorned with fractal mosaics, drifting at sea to create a living resonance lab. Sensors recorded how ocean currents and wind patterns modulated the compassion waves, producing unique spirals in the water, visible from satellite imagery. Tourists flocked to witness the phenomenon, and island elders wove the patterns into their traditional dances, creating a fusion of ancestral ritual and interstellar science. In New York City, a collective called Skywriting Dreams emerged. Pilots flying small planes crafted flight paths that traced fractal arcs across the sky, leaving contrails in intricate patterns for all to see. Drone light shows complemented the aerial art. The beams choreographed to rise and fall in harmony with the compassion field's frequencies. Instagram feeds filled with images of cottony spirals against blue firmaments, each viewer marveling at how human creativity could mirror alien design. Not everyone embraced the wonder, however. In Brasilia, a coalition of technophobes and religious fundamentalists launched protests, claiming the compassion field was a diabolical force, an alien relic meant to undermine faith and reason. They disrupted resonance chamber sessions with loud sirens and demanded the UN abolish Project Unity and seal the Antarctic site forever. Counter-protesters answered with peaceful sit-ins inside chambers, humming fractal tones in solidarity. Tensions flared briefly, reminding the world that fear and hope often dance on the same edge. In the arts, a remarkable movement known as fractal realism blossomed. Painters, sculptors, and poets began embedding fractal geometry and compassion wave motifs into their work. Art galleries, from performance artists, staged immersive experiences where audiences lay inside circular rooms, wrapped in velvet cushions, listening to fractal soundscapes while scented mists hinted at distant worlds. Critics hailed the movement as the most significant artistic renaissance since the Impressionists, a fusion of science and soul that transcended cultural boundaries. At the same time, universities reported a spike in students enrolling in interdisciplinary programs, combining astrophysics, anthropology, and dream psychology. Professors struggled to accommodate the surge, hastily designing new courses on topics like interstellar semiotics and empathy engineering. Students collaborated across time zones in virtual labs, sharing data from home-built resonance detectors. Late-night hackathons produced open-source apps that visualized compassion wave interactions deep beneath the Sahara, in a subterranean art bunker in Mali. Curators discovered rock art depicting spirals and nested patterns, eerily like the observer's fractals, painted more than 10,000 years ago. Carbon dating and pigment analysis confirmed the antiquity. Historians speculated. Had prehistoric humans glimpsed the compassion field in visions? Or was the similarity mere coincidence of human pattern making? The find renewed debates about the universal language of geometry and whether the observers had, in fact, seeded fractal thinking across millennia. On the humanitarian front, charities harnessed the compassion field for social good. In Johannesburg, a non-profit launched Resonance Relief, transmitting fractal soundtracks into refugee camps to ease trauma. Skeptics pointed to placebo effects, but for many, the emotional relief felt profoundly real. Amid these myriad developments, the Antarctic chamber continued to hum. Each activation session revealed new data. Energy surges that mirrored seismic activity in the Pacific Rim. Pulse patterns that aligned with migratory bird flocks. Fractal sequences that resonated with the rhythms of human brainwaves measured in sleep studies. It was as if the chamber served as a nexus, weaving together disparate threads of Earth's natural and human systems into a unified tapestry. Researchers began calling it the compass of compassion, believing it might guide us toward a deeper understanding of interspecies empathy and planetary stewardship. Yet, for all the breakthroughs, a sense of wonder remained. No one knew who built the chamber or whether it was intended as a beacon, a test, or a teaching tool. And though the compassion field manifested in art, science, and human hearts, its true nature, its source, its limits, its ultimate purpose eluded us still. Earth stands at a crossroads, empowered by fractal insights and compassion-driven unity, yet haunted by questions older than civilization itself. Will the chamber reveal its origin story? Will our probes find the spire or uncover other watchers in the void? And can humanity maintain its newfound harmony when faced with the immense unknown? The next signal may answer these questions or raise even more profound mysteries to guide our journey forward. The dream ship's journeys grew ever more enigmatic as they skirted the reaches of our solar system and ventured into the blackness beyond. Engineers tracking Probe Alpha noticed its quantum entanglement beacon flicker erratically, a phenomenon never anticipated. In response, Mission Control rerouted additional power, only to discover that the compassion field frequencies seemed to feed back into the beacon, amplifying its signal in ways that threatened to overload the probe's core. Rather than a danger, however, this surge produced the first clear data on how the compassion waves behaved in interstellar space. They didn't dissipate with distance, but instead wove themselves into the fabric of dark matter, momentarily lighting up unseen structures between stars. Simultaneously, Probe Beta, as it swept past Mars, recorded a series of clicks and tonal sequences that bore a faint resemblance to the fractal pulses from the observer spire. Scientists initially dismissed these as instrument artifacts, until a team of exolinguists decoded a repeating motif, a three-note pattern that matched the cadence of human heartbeat rhythms recorded during resonance chamber experiments. Could the compassion field itself be a living language? One that combined emotion and geometry in a code both species could share. Philosophers speculated that perhaps every being capable of feeling generated a unique signature, and our collective heartbeat had become a cosmic beacon, calling out to whatever lay beyond. Back on Earth, the global tapestry of compassion-inspired projects reached a critical juncture. The Hall of Echoes in Nevada reported its highest attendance yet, but also noted a troubling trend. Some visitors experienced disorientation and vertigo as the fractal soundscapes overlaid too intensely with their own brainwaves. Neurologists warned that excessive exposure could trigger neural feedback loops, while skeptics seized upon the reports to argue that the compassion field might be more invasive than benevolent. A consortium of ethicists called for guidelines, proposing that no individual should experience. After weeks of meticulous analysis, researchers managed to unlock a secondary compartment hidden within its core. Inside lay a delicate lattice of crystalline filaments, arranged in a double helix, more intricate than any terrestrial DNA. Early spectrographic scans revealed that the filaments pulsed at a frequency corresponding not to sound or light, but to the very oscillations of space-time itself. It was as if the observers had embedded a fragment of their environment within the chamber. Something like a seed of cosmic consciousness waiting to germinate. The discovery reignited a fierce debate over how and whether to engage with the filaments. Some scientists, driven by insatiable curiosity, argued for an immediate experiment to expose them to escalating compassion field intensities and observe their response. Others cautioned that tampering with space-time oscillations could have unforeseen consequences, from localized distortion. The UN task force ultimately voted for a measured approach, a 3-phase protocol beginning with passive observation, followed by controlled stimulation, and culminating, only if safe, in direct interaction. As these deliberations unfolded, humanities scholars explored the cultural impact of contact on the collective psyche. In Buenos Aires, a theater troupe premiered a play in which characters spoke entirely in fractal rhythms, using vocal percussion and movement to embody the compassion field's patterns. Audiences, initially baffled, reported an uncanny resonance in their chests, an almost physical echo of the beats on stage. In Lagos, poets compiled an anthology titled Fractal Hearts, translating the compassion pulses into free verse lines that sought to capture their geometry in words. The project sold out within days, sending linguists scrambling to analyze how readers emotionally keyed into the unfamiliar. A coalition of nations led by the New Earth Alliance insisted that all research and broadcasts be governed by an interstellar ethics charter, while several emerging powers balked, demanding sovereign control over their own resonance chamber networks and dreamship data. Diplomatic backchannels buzzed with accusations that certain states intended to weaponize compassion field technology, using it to pacify dissent or manipulate public opinion. Secret memos leaked, revealing that a handful of military contractors had already filed patents for devices promising emotional regulation under the guise of medical therapy. Amid this uncertainty, a different kind of frontier emerged: virtual reality embassies. Tech startups in Seoul and Stockholm raced to build online spaces where humans could meet observers in simulated environments. Users donned VR headsets and entered crystalline plazas bathed in. Some participants felt genuine empathy for their alien hosts, while others reported an unnerving sense of being watched, as though the avatar's multifaceted eyes tracked their every move. The VR embassies were shut down temporarily after several users experienced nightmares of dissolution, visions of themselves unraveling into endless spirals. On the probes themselves, subtle anomalies began to emerge. Probe Gamma, charting a course toward the asteroid belt, transmitted images of surface features that glowed faintly when struck by starlight, a phenomenon the onboard cameras recorded in the compassion frequency spectrum. The asteroids, previously thought inert and lifeless, now appeared to carry embedded resonant crystals similar to those in Antarctica. Could the observers have seeded multiple waypoints throughout our system as markers or catalysts for contact? Mission planners debated adjusting the probes' trajectories to. Meanwhile, in remote villages and sprawling metropolises alike, ordinary people found their dreams more vivid than ever before. Sleep clinics reported a surge in patients seeking observer-induced lucid dreams, visions of crystalline spires and interstellar symphonies. Dream journals piled up, filled with sketches of impossible geometries and feelings of unity with something vast and unknowable. Psychologists cautioned that such intense dreaming could blur the line between reality and imagination. But many argued that the phenomenon represented a new frontier of human consciousness, proof that contact with the alien had catalyzed an evolution in our collective mind. Humanity stood poised on the brink of discovery, probes unraveling echoes of the observer's presence scattered across the solar system. Society grappling with the benefits and risks of a compassion field that could heal or disorder. With every new signal and every shared dream, we inched closer to an encounter that might redefine our understanding of life, time, and connection itself. A hush fell over the frozen plain as the team in Antarctica activated the crystalline filaments for the first experimental cycle. Power surged through conduits, calibrated to compassion field frequencies, and the double helix structure glowed with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Instruments registered slight fluctuations in local gravity, as if the lattice were warping space itself, and the air filled with a resonant hum that reverberated through the sled dog outposts hundreds of miles away. Researchers donned insulated helmets equipped with neural sensors, bracing for whatever effects the activation might unleash on human cognition. Inside the dome, test subjects sat in meditation posture, eyes closed. Within minutes, many reported visions of geometric landscapes unfolding overhead. Colossal crystalline arches set against void black skies, winding staircases leading nowhere, and corridors of mirror-shattered light. Some described feeling weightless, as though their consciousness had slipped free of the body and drifted toward the filaments themselves. Brain scans recorded surges in theta and gamma wave activity, reminiscent of deep meditation or psychedelic states, yet markedly distinct from anything previously catalogued. Meanwhile, the dream ships continued sending data. Probe Delta, skimming past the asteroid belt, transmitted high-contrast spectrographic images, revealing that the embedded crystals glowed in multiple bands of the infrared spectrum when bathed in cosmic radiation. This suggested the compassion field could stimulate energy emissions far beyond the audible frequency range, raising the tantalizing possibility of harnessing. Planetary scientists began speculating. Could rogue microreactors, designed along filamentous architectures, someday power space stations or revive desolate moons? Across oceans, the Human Resonance Network expanded. In Mumbai, a rooftop group chanted fractal rhythms at sunrise, their voices amplified by improvised ribbon microphone arrays. The vibrations aligned with the compassion field to produce standing waves in the surrounding air, creating a tangible halo effect seen as shimmering heat ripples above the city skyline. Similar gatherings sprang up in urban centers from Lagos to London, knitting a web of synchronized rituals that transcended language and culture. Social media algorithms flagged the phenomenon as Global Compassion Hour, and hashtags spiked as people posted videos of collective humming and fractal light projections on historic back under the Antarctic ice. A breakthrough came when a physicist noticed that the filament's pulsing pattern modulated slightly whenever solar activity spiked. A coronal mass ejection that sent auroras racing across Earth also triggered a corresponding surge in the chamber's resonance. It was as if the filaments were attuned not only to human emotion, but to the rhythms of our sun. Weaving together astrophysics and anthropology in a single thread, the team realized they might be dealing with a multi-domain. Wherever matter clumped under electromagnetic forces, the compassion field could leave an imprint. Some speculated that the same principle shaped galactic structures on a grand scale, hinting at a cosmic pattern of empathy writ large across the universe. On Earth's surface, political leaders wrestled with the growing influence of compassion-driven technology. A summit convened in Brussels, aiming to draft regulations for resonance utilization. The ethical guidelines for using compassion field tools in medicine, education, and defense. Dissenters warned that codifying empathy risked reducing it to a bureaucratic checkbox, stripping the field of its mystery. Advocates countered that without safeguards, the technology could be monopolized by corporations or exploited by authoritarian regimes to pacify populations without consent. Late-night sessions gave way to marathon debates, and journalists dubbed the outcome while human institutions grappled with these questions. Indigenous communities offered their own wisdom. In the rainforests of the Amazon, shamans incorporated fractal humming into age-old healing ceremonies, insisting that compassion was not merely a field to be measured, but a living spirit that dwelled in all things. They built small chambers of clay and reed, mimicking the Antarctic dome's shape, and guided participants through breathwork synchronized with local bird calls. Anthropologists watching rituals noted that participants often experienced vivid encounters with ancestral visions, spirits taking fractal forms that echoed the observers' patterns. These testimonies fueled a global conversation about the spiritual dimensions of the compassion field, one that transcended purely scientific discourse. Not far from Antarctic Chamber, a satellite tracking the dream ships detected a sudden shift. Probe Epsilon, previously silent, emanated a faint signal on a previously unused frequency. The probe's beacon included a single, looping fractal sequence. One unlike any cataloged from the spire or the chamber's filaments. Cryptographers scrambled to decode it, theorizing that this might be the first pure message from the observers themselves, filtered only through the probes and unmediated by Earth's broadcasts. Early attempts to overlay the sequence onto known compassion field patterns produced jarring dissonances. The loops accelerated and decelerated unpredictably, suggesting a rhythm based on a non-earthly measure of time. In response, teams across the globe raced to recalibrate their receivers. In Johannesburg, engineers modified radio telescopes to sample the new frequency, while in Melbourne, sound artists transformed the raw signal into auditory experiments, pulsing drones that felt at once alien and eternities, or collapsed into instants. Poets compared it to reading the pulse of a star through the ribcage. Amidst the scientific frenzy, ordinary people found themselves living new realities. Street musicians in New Orleans improvised riffs in the probe signal frequency, their brass horns warbling in odd intervals that seemed to echo the cosmos. In Seoul, couples danced to silent music, wearing bone-conducting headphones that played the dissonant loops, their feet tracing fractal steps on LED-lit floors. Parents read bedtime stories woven around the probe sequence, inventing tales of explorers who followed the loops to hidden galaxies. Even commuters on busy metros tapped cell phone apps that synchronized vibration motors to the new pattern, creating personal resonance chambers in their pockets. As the crystalline filaments pulsed beneath kilometers of ice, and the dream ships carried humanity's heartbeats into the void, a single truth became clear. Contact was no longer a moment in time, but an unfolding process, a mosaic of experiments, rituals, conflicts, and revelations. The compassion field had become a mirror, reflecting our collective dreams, fears, and aspirations back at us, and inviting us to decide what kind of species we wished to become. The next signal, the next activation, the next dream might shift the course of history again. And so, guided by the looping fractal that now resonated through air, water, and crystalline glass alike, Humanity pressed forward into the great unknown, ready to listen, to learn, and to resonate as never before. Radio silence shattered one evening when an unexpected burst of data streamed in from Probe Zeta, cruising at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. The message was encoded not in pulses or patterns, but in spatial coordinates, lines of latitude and longitude overlaying a faint image of a distant world. Analysts, the coordinates pointed to the summit of Mount Shasta in California, a place steeped in Native American lore of star people. Within hours, an international expedition assembled at the mountain's base, setting up precision receivers and fractal mapping drones to triangulate any transmission or field anomaly. As the team climbed through alpine forests, local tribes performed blessings, invoking ancient names that no one knew how to pronounce, but all felt resonate deeply. When they reached the icy summit at dawn, the drones recorded a subtle spike in the compassion field frequency, just a hair above background noise, yet unmistakably present. Geologists rappelled down hidden chasms to place magnetometers and biosensors, while biologists collected samples of lichen that, under microscopic analysis, exhibited fractal growth patterns mirroring the observer sequences. It seemed as back in Geneva, the coordinates from Zeta prompted a fresh wave of debate. Had the observers deliberately directed us to a sacred site, linking their ancient design to humanity's oldest stories? Or was the probe malfunctioning, misreading cosmic noise as meaningful data? Regardless, the global scientific community scrambled to replicate the findings on other sacred peaks. Uluru in Australia, Machu Picchu in Peru, and the Himalayas above Kathmandu, only to discover faint compassion field upticks at each location. Telescope arrays in Chile and the Canary Islands were swiftly reprogrammed to seek faint occultations or thermal signatures along those vectors. Within nights, several candidate objects blipped into view, lozenge-shaped bodies that dimmed and brightened in cycles matching compassion field frequencies, as though breathing in and out. Cultural life on Earth pulsed with renewed vigor. In Sao Paulo's graffiti-covered alleys, street artists spray-painted giant murals of interlocking solar system diagrams, overlaid with fractal grids, inviting passers-by to ponder the unseen connections binding all worlds. Musicians in Istanbul incorporated the crystalline waveform into traditional makams, creating haunting melodies that felt at once ancient and profoundly futuristic. In remote Siberia, nomadic reindeer herders gathered around campfires to share stories of sky mirrors. And at the same time, a cautionary note sounded in military academies from Washington to Beijing. War game simulations introduced compassion field warfare scenarios, in which rival states attempted to flood each other's populations with targeted fractal frequencies, inducing pacifism in some regions, panic in others. The simulations warned that the same resonance capable of uplifting communities could be weaponized, cracking societal cohesion if misused. As policymakers digested these scenarios, secret committees formed to explore countermeasures, from frequency jammers to neural shields, while civil rights groups protested the very notion of emotional defense tools that could infringe on mental autonomy. Even as tensions simmered, scientific breakthroughs accelerated. A collaboration between ecologists and engineers produced the world's first resonance forest in northern Finland. Thousands of saplings, genetically and air-purifying compounds, and accelerated growth hormones. Early trials showed significant reductions in local pollution, and the concept spread to urban planners eager to deploy biofractal greenbelts around megacities from Jakarta to Johannesburg. Critics questioned the ethics of engineering ecosystems for human ends, but proponents argued that harnessing the compassion field for planetary healing was the purest expression of the observer's gift. Within hearts and minds, individuals wrestled with profound questions. A veteran in Berlin wrote a memoir about how listening to the fractal soundscapes had coaxed him from depression, yet lingering nightmares of isolation haunted his sleep. A school teacher in Nairobi organized nightly compassion field reading circles. And in Tokyo, a software developer embedded compassion frequency modulation into a popular meditation app, inadvertently sparking a social media phenomenon. Millions of users reported sudden bursts of clarity and emotional resilience after just 5 minutes of listening. Then, without warning, the compassion field began to fluctuate unpredictably worldwide. Resonance detectors from Quito to Quebec recorded dropouts and surges that defied all known cause. Solar storms, seismic activity, and human broadcasts failed to account for the anomalies. The Antarctic chamber's filaments dimmed, while Mount Shasta's readings jumped beyond safe thresholds. Scientists scrambled to model the turbulence, fearing that the compassion network, our fragile bridge to the observers, might be at risk of collapse. Amid the turmoil, a new message arrived from Probe Zeta. A single phrase in the terse warning reverberated through every capital, every research lab, and every home with a resonance detector. Some interpreted it as a call to harmonize our world's divisions. Others feared it foreshadowed dire consequences if we failed. Panicked forums debated whether the observers would sever contact or worse, judge humanity unworthy. Yet even in the face of uncertainty, a surge of solidarity emerged. Across the globe, people organized balance vigils, gatherings where communities hummed fractal cadences, recited volunteer rosters, and reaffirmed bonds across ideological lines. Scientists doubled down on collaborative models, sharing anomaly data in real time. Religious leaders offered prayers that embraced both ancient faith and cosmic wonder. Children drew pictures of two galaxies merging as friends, and social media. In the midst of this worldwide effort, the compassion field's turbulence resolved as suddenly as it had begun. Detectors stabilized, fractal patterns resumed their regular cycles, and the crystal filaments in Antarctica glowed with renewed brilliance. And high above the Kuiper Belt, Probe Zeta's transmitter blinked once more, this time with a gentle addendum beneath the warning. "We trust you." The two words, simple and profound, echoed in human consciousness, like a promise and a challenge wrapped into one. With that, a profound stillness fell across Earth. The coordinates of Mount Shasta, the waveforms of the probes, the ancient petroglyphs and lichen patterns, all the threads we'd woven into this tapestry, converged into a moment of shared breath. Humanity stood at the brink of a new era. Its flaws and hopes lay bare before a watching intelligence. And in that silence, every soul felt the weight of choice, to rise to trust offered. Beneath the vast dome of stars, humanity prepared its final chapter, an offering and question woven into the fabric of our best selves. In laboratories, artists' studios, classrooms, and living rooms, people finalized the universal echo, a composite transmission blending the most resonant expressions of human spirit. It began with a heartbeat sequence, recorded from children in orphanages, followed by a tapestry of voices reciting universal truths. We are one. We remember kindness. We choose growth. Delivered in dozens of languages. Interlaced were improvisational jazz solos, Gregorian chants, desert flute melodies, and whale song harmonies, all layered atop fractal soundscapes drawn from the compassion field itself. Visual data accompanied the audio. Time-lapse footage of seedlings sprouting in reclaimed wastelands. Dancers tracing spirals, each frame pulsed in sync with the final waveform. A living mosaic of our collective heartbeat. As launch day for the final dream ship dawned, ceremonies unfolded on every continent. In Rio de Janeiro, samba troops performed in concentric circles around the rocket pad. In New Delhi, temple bells rang 17 times, echoing the prime fractal pulses, while youth choirs sang a harmony written specifically for the event. In Nairobi, elders performed blessing rites with smoke-wrapped bundles of sage and sandalwood, invoking both ancestral spirits and the compassion that now flowed between worlds. And on a remote Pacific atoll, scientists powered up a solar array dedicated to amplifying the final transmission, ensuring even the faintest signal would surge out into the void. When the ship rose, its silhouette bore intricate filigrees etched into the hull, fractal motifs co-developed by human and AI designers, each one meant to encode not only data, but the ethos of collaboration. The booster ignited with a low-frequency hum that resonated through the crowd like a living chord. And as the vessel broke Earth's atmosphere, thousands felt a simultaneous shiver of awe and hope. Amateur astronomers trained telescopes skyward to track its ascent, and radio enthusiasts tuned their receivers to the compassion frequency, ready to witness the last message of this era. Even as the ship slipped into the black, life on Earth carried forward. Cities adapted their streetlights to architects designed buildings whose structural beams followed the resonance chords, believing that inhabiting fractal spaces could heal both body and mind. Months passed, and the final dream ship navigated toward the spire's last known coordinates. On Earth, the global network of compassion detectors remained vigilant, scanning for any flicker or pulse that might signal a response. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, screens worldwide lit up with a brief but unmistakable reception. A cascade of new fractal forms, more complex than any before, unfolding in rapid succession. Overlaying them in a script of light appeared a single word translated into every major language: together. The response hung in the sky like a promise. It carried weight of an invitation to continue the dialogue, to forge a partnership unbound by distance, and it entrusted us with a choice: to build bridges of empathy and creativity, or to let this moment slip into forgotten memory. In that instant, millions set aside their differences. Rival political factions agreed to fund a joint research station near the Arctic Circle, devoted to studying compassion field dynamics and environmental resilience. Tech companies open-sourced their resonance chamber designs, inviting inventors from every background to innovate freely. Cultural institutions created exchange programs with distant observatories, sending poets, engineers, and dreamers on rotating residencies abroad, where abroad now meant somewhere between stars. Across the world's oceans, a network of floating labs broadcast compassion field waves into deep-sea trenches, exploring whether the resonance could revive coral reefs and nourish abyssal ecosystems. Mountain villages carved fractal water channels into their terraces. In dense metropolises, rooftop gardens arranged their planters in spiral configurations, harvesting cleaner air while greeting the sky with patterned salutations. And somewhere beyond our solar system, the dream ship delivered humanity's final gift, a synthesis of our greatest aspirations, our deepest regrets, and our unyielding hope. The observers, silent sentinels no more, received the offering and responded with a new transmission. An open-ended pattern that invited endless exploration. An algorithmic seed that humanity stands not at a finish line, but at the threshold of infinite possibility. A species transformed by contact, bound not by chains, but by questions that stretch beyond the stars. And as our voices rise in harmony with the cosmos, we carry forward the simple truth the observers taught us, that together, in resonance and wonder, we can illuminate even the darkest reaches of the universe. Humanity stands not at a finish line, but at the threshold of infinite possibility. A species transformed by contact, bound not by chains, but by questions that stretch beyond the stars. And as our voices rise in harmony with the cosmos, we carry forward the simple truth the observers taught us, that together, in resonance and wonder, we can illuminate even the darkest reaches of the universe.